My brother took every cent of the $2 million inheritance our father left behind. 2 years later, I gave him a wedding gift that made him cry. Not from guilt, but from fear. It wasn't an expensive present wrapped in ribbons. It was something small, simple, but powerful enough to remind him that I had never forgotten what he did to me. But this isn't really a story about money. It's a story about trust, about the kind of wounds only family can leave, and about patience. The silent weapon that's stronger than any words of anger. I learned that revenge doesn't always need violence, or even confrontation. Sometimes all it takes is time, and a calm smile when you're standing exactly where they once believed you'd never reach. I'm sharing this story not to brag, but because I want you to understand the 3 lessons I learned. First, trusting the wrong person can cost you everything. Second, losing what you thought defined you might be the thing that sets you free. And third, the deepest kind of revenge isn't making them suffer. It's showing them you never needed them to win. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you would have done anything for? I have. And before I tell you what I did to make my brother remember me forever, let me take you back to the day my father passed away. The day of the will reading changed everything. My brother and I couldn't have been more different. He was ambitious, charming, the kind of man who always wanted to be the center of attention. I was quieter, more patient, the one who stayed behind to take care of our father when his health started to fail. For years, I thought that mattered. I thought love and loyalty would speak louder than money. I was wrong. When my father passed away, I wasn't just grieving him. I was grieving the years I'd lost, trying to prove myself to a man who was already proud of me, but too weak to fight against my brother's manipulation. On the day of the will reading, I sat across from my brother in the lawyer's office. His suit was sharp, his expression calm, but his eyes held that same confidence he'd worn all his life, the look of someone who believed he'd already won. The lawyer opened the folder, read the papers slowly, and then said the words that split my world in half. To my eldest son, Michael, I leave the family business, the house, and all remaining assets, estimated at $2 million. To my younger son, Daniel, I leave my personal watch, a symbol of time well spent. My brother smiled at me like he pitied me, but it was the kind of smile that said he'd finally beaten me. I remember sitting there, frozen, hearing the lawyer's voice fade behind the pounding in my chest. I wanted to speak, to ask why, but the words wouldn't come. All I could do was nod, take the watch, and leave the room before anyone could see my face. At the funeral, he acted like nothing had happened. He put an arm around my shoulder, told guests how close we were, how much our father had loved us both. Every word from his mouth felt like a knife dressed in kindness. I kept silent, holding the watch in my hand, like it could somehow protect me from the truth I already knew. A week later, while sorting through our father's old computer, I found something I was never meant to see. An email from my brother to my father, sent 2 months before he died. It was polite, respectful even, but underneath the words was pressure. He had convinced our father to change the will, saying I wasn't ready, that I'd waste the inheritance. Reading that email broke something inside me. I had already lost my father, but in that moment, I realized I'd also lost my brother, not to death, but to greed. And that kind of loss cuts deeper than any goodbye. From that day on, I promised myself one thing. I wouldn't fight him with anger. I would wait. I would let time, the one thing my father left me, become my greatest weapon. I didn't speak to him for a whole year. After the funeral, I packed a small suitcase, left our hometown, and moved to a quiet city where no one knew my name. I rented a small apartment, got an office job, and tried to convince myself that distance would make it easier to forget. But it didn't. The anger followed me like a shadow, silent, heavy, always just behind me. There were nights I couldn't sleep. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, hearing his words, his laugh, his fake sympathy. I hated him, but I hated myself more for being naive enough to think blood was stronger than greed. I kept wondering if my father had truly believed I wasn't ready, or if he'd just been too tired to fight anymore. The only thing I took from home was my father's old watch. It sat on the desk beside my bed, ticking softly in the dark. Some nights, when the silence was too loud, I'd pick it up and hold it close to my ear. Every tick reminded me, patience, son, patience. That sound became my rhythm, my reminder that revenge didn't have to come from rage. It could come from growth. I stopped drinking. I started reading books about business, finance, investment. I took online courses after work, learned how money really moved, how people built empires from nothing but time and discipline. At first it was slow. I failed more than I succeeded, but every small win felt like reclaiming a piece of what I'd lost. I invested my savings, built a side business, learned to take risks the smart way, and with each passing month, the anger began to fade, replaced by focus. By the time I turned 35, I had more money than my father ever did. But more than that, I had something my brother never would: patience, clarity, and a plan. And deep down, I knew time was finally starting to turn in my favor. Then came the day my brother called. It had been years since I'd heard his voice. I still remember the sound of it, confident, smooth, the kind of tone that used to make people believe every word he said. But that day, his voice was different, shaky, tired, desperate. He told me the company our father had built was collapsing, bad investments, mounting debts, employees leaving one by one. He said he needed help, that I was the only person he could count on now. For a moment, I almost believed him. For a split second, the little brother inside me wanted to say yes, to forget everything and save him. But then I remembered that email, that smile at the will reading, and every sleepless night that followed. So, I told him what he wanted to hear. I said I'd think about it. I said we could meet soon to discuss options. He thanked me, his voice cracking with relief. When the call ended, I sat there for a long time, staring at my phone, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Calm. I didn't help him. Not the way he expected. Instead, I began to move quietly, carefully, through people he didn't know I knew. I found one of his frustrated business partners, a man ready to sell his shares just to cut his losses. Through a third party, I bought those shares. Then another, and another. Piece by piece, I took control of the company my brother had once stolen from me. No one connected the dots. To him, I was still the younger brother who'd disappeared, living a quiet life far from business or ambition. He had no idea the same patience that once made me weak was now my greatest advantage. Months later, the deal was complete. On paper, the company had a new majority shareholder, a private firm, faceless and silent. In reality, it was me. I owned it. Every contract, every building, every memory of my father's legacy. It was mine again, and I didn't say a word. I didn't call him. I didn't show up at his office. I just waited, because I knew the perfect day was coming. The day my brother would stand in front of everyone he wanted to impress, and I would give him a gift he would never forget. His wedding day. His wedding day, my moment of silence. It was everything he'd always dreamed of. A luxury hotel, crystal chandeliers, guests dressed like royalty, a string quartet playing softly under golden lights, the kind of event that screamed success. And there he was, my brother, standing tall in a tailored suit, laughing, shaking hands, soaking up every ounce of admiration he could get. When he saw me walk in, his smile faltered for just a second. Maybe he didn't expect me to come. Maybe he thought I'd still be somewhere small, forgotten, beneath him. But I wasn't that person anymore. I walked toward him calmly, handed him a small black box wrapped in silver paper, and said quietly, "Congratulations, brother." He laughed, that same old laugh I'd known since childhood. Loud, confident, full of pride. He thanked me, patted my shoulder, and turned the box over in his hands. "You didn't have to get me anything," he said. I smiled. I wanted to. It's something meaningful. He opened it, expecting money, maybe a watch, something expensive to match his ego. But inside was a single silver key and a small card that read, "To the new beginning." He looked at me, confused. "A key?" he asked, half laughing. I leaned closer, close enough that only he could hear me. "That key opens the office of your old company," I whispered. "I bought it last month. You work for me now." The smile froze on his face. For a moment, he didn't move. Then I saw it. That flicker of realization, That panic behind his eyes, the same confidence he'd worn all his life vanished in an instant. I didn't stay to watch him crumble. I didn't need to. I turned, nodded politely to his bride, and walked away as the music swelled around us. People kept laughing, drinking, celebrating, no one knowing that the man of the hour had just lost everything. That day, I didn't shout. I didn't gloat. I just smiled. Because finally, I was free. It took me years to understand that revenge isn't about hurting someone back. It's not about making them feel the same pain you did. It's about showing them, and yourself, that you never needed them to win. All that anger I carried, all those sleepless nights, they weren't about justice. They were about freedom. And when I finally let go, that's when I truly got it back. For a long time, I thought getting even would heal me. But standing there that night, watching him lose everything without me saying a single cruel word, I realized something. The most powerful thing you can ever do to someone who betrayed you is to rise so high they can't reach you anymore. Maybe one day, I'll forgive him. Maybe time will soften what still feels like a scar. But for now, I'm just grateful. Grateful that he taught me what family really means. That blood doesn't define loyalty, and silence can be louder than revenge. I walked away from that wedding without looking back. I thought it was over. I thought I'd close that chapter for good. But I was wrong, because a month later, he came back with something that changed everything again.